The mansion looked perfect from the outside. Tall gates, clean gardens, and quiet streets made it seem like a peaceful place where nothing could go wrong. People passing by often slowed their cars just to look at it. Many believed a family living there must have a perfect life. They had wealth, power, and everything money could buy. But behind those walls, something was deeply broken. The billionaire had built his fortune through sharp decisions and endless work. He controlled companies, contracts, and people with ease. In boardrooms, his words carried weight. When he spoke, others listened. But at home, none of that power mattered. His young daughter ruled the house in a very different way. She was not a bad child. She was smart, observant, and quick to learn. But she carried a storm inside her. She refused to follow rules, rejected affection, and reacted strongly to even small situations. One moment she was silent, staring into nothing. The next, she was screaming, throwing things, or locking herself in her room for hours. The family tried everything. The best tutors were hired, flown in from different countries. Each arrived with confidence, believing they could help. They came with plans, schedules, and promises. None of them lasted long. Some quit within days. Others tried for weeks before giving up, saying the child was too difficult or emotionally unreachable. Nannies came and went like shadows. Some were kind, some strict, some gentle, some firm. None made a difference. The girl ignored them or pushed them away. If they tried to correct her, she became aggressive. If they tried to comfort her, she shut down. Eventually, every nanny packed their bags and left, shaken and exhausted. Therapists were brought in quietly, so the public would not know. Expensive sessions took place in private rooms. The child barely spoke during them. She stared at the floor or the wall, answering questions with silence. Experts exchanged worried looks, offering theories but no real solutions. The parents felt helpless. At night, when the house grew quiet, they sat together wondering where they went wrong. They had given her the best schools, the finest clothes, and the safest environment. Yet their daughter looked lonely, angry, and lost. They feared her future more than any business risk. What hurt most was how distant she had become. She did not run to them when she was scared. She did not laugh easily. Her eyes carried something heavy, something far beyond her age. It was as if she had learned early that emotions were dangerous. The household staff whispered among themselves. Some believed the child was spoiled. Others thought she was sick. A few felt sorry for her but did not dare to say it out loud. Everyone walked carefully around her, afraid of triggering another outburst. One evening, the parents decided to do something normal, something simple. They took her out to dinner at a quiet restaurant in the city. No guards nearby, no grand entrance, just a family trying to feel human again. First, things seemed fine. The girl sat quietly, her feet swinging under the chair. But when the food arrived, something changed. She pushed the plate away, her face tightening. Her breathing grew fast. Within seconds, she was shouting, knocking over a glass, drawing eyes from every table. The parents froze. This scene was too familiar. People stared. Some shook their heads. Others whispered. The father felt anger rising, mixed with shame. The mother felt tears burning her eyes. They tried to calm her, but it only made things worse. That was when the waitress noticed. She had seen many families, many children, many difficult moments. But something about this girl felt different. This was not a child seeking attention. This was a child drowning in emotion. Instead of rushing over with instructions or complaints, the waitress approached slowly. She knelt slightly so she was at eye level with the girl. Her voice was calm, not soft, not firm, just real. She did not tell the girl to behave. She did not look at the parents for permission. She simply spoke to the child as if she mattered. The girl stopped screaming. It was not immediate. There was hesitation, but her eyes shifted. She looked at the waitress, studying her face. The room felt suddenly still. The waitress said something simple. Nothing magical. Nothing dramatic. But it landed in a place no one had reached before. For the first time that evening, the girl listened. The parents watched in disbelief. They had seen experts fail. They had seen professionals give up. Yet here was a stranger, wearing a plain uniform, standing calmly in front of their child. The girl did not smile. She did not apologize. But she picked up her fork. It was a small moment, so small that others might have missed it. But for the parents, it felt like the ground had shifted beneath them. They finished dinner quietly. No more outbursts. No more shouting. The waitress checked on them once more, then returned to her work as if nothing special had happened. On the way home, the parents said very little. Their minds were racing. Who was that woman? Why did their daughter respond to her? What had everyone else missed? That night, the girl slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. And without knowing it, a simple waitress had just stepped into a story that would change all of their lives. The next morning, the house woke up earlier than usual. The billionaire sat at the long dining table, untouched coffee growing cold in front of him. His wife watched their daughter quietly eating toast, something that almost never happened without resistance. The silence felt strange, but not uncomfortable. Felt cautious, like everyone was afraid to break something fragile. The parents could not stop thinking about the night before. The moment replayed again and again in their minds. A crowded restaurant, their child losing control. Then a simple waitress stepping in and somehow reaching her. They tried to talk about it softly, using careful words. They did not want to make their daughter feel like she was being examined. The girl avoided eye contact, but she listened. When asked if she remembered the waitress, she nodded once. Nothing more. For the rest of the day, the house returned to its usual routine. A tutor arrived in the afternoon, full of confidence and bright smiles. Within 30 minutes, the lesson collapsed. The girl pushed the books away and walked out. The tutor sighed, packed up, and left with a polite excuse. The parents exchanged tired looks. That small hope from the restaurant felt like it was slipping away. That evening, they made a quiet decision. They returned to the same restaurant. This time, there was no celebration, no special reason. They sat at the same table. The daughter looked around, curious but guarded. The waitress noticed them almost immediately. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should approach. The father caught her eye and gave a small nod. She walked over, not with excitement, not with fear, just calm awareness. The girl looked up at her. No anger, no shouting, just observation. The waitress spoke again, the same simple way as before. She did not talk down to the child. She did not praise her excessively. She treated her like a person, not a problem to solve. The parents watched closely. The girl responded with short words, then longer ones, then questions of her own. Felt unreal. Over the next few days, the family returned again and again. They ordered simple meals. They stayed longer than usual. And each time, the waitress spoke with the girl for a few minutes. Sometimes they talked about food. Sometimes about small things like colors, animals, or places. There was no pressure, no expectations. Slowly, the girl began to change. She waited instead of reacting. She listened instead of shouting. Her anger did not disappear, but it softened, like a storm losing its strength. At home, the parents noticed small differences. Doors were slammed less often. Objects stopped flying across rooms. The girl still struggled, but she was no longer unreachable. One evening, the mother gently asked why she liked the waitress. The girl thought for a long time before answering. "She doesn't look scared of me," she finally said. The words hit harder than any expert report. The parents realized then how many people had approached their daughter with fear, frustration, or control. Tutors wanted obedience. Nannies wanted peace. Therapists wanted answers. No one had simply accepted her emotions without trying to fix them immediately. The waitress did not stay longer than needed. She never crossed boundaries. She did not ask for money or attention. When her shift ended, she left like any other worker. But her presence stayed. One night, the father asked her to sit for a moment after her shift. He spoke honestly without his usual authority. He told her how desperate they were, how lost they felt. The waitress listened quietly. She did not interrupt. When he finished, she said something simple. Sometimes kids act loud when they feel invisible. That was all. No advice. No judgment. The words stayed with the parents long after they returned home. Days turned into weeks. The girl asked about the restaurant even when they did not go. She asked if the waitress was working that day. She asked when they could return. The parents noticed something else too. The girl began expressing her feelings with words. When she felt overwhelmed, she said it. When she felt angry, she said why. It was not perfect. There were still difficult days. Still tears. Still silence. But there was progress. The parents finally asked the waitress if she would visit their home one afternoon. Not as staff. Not as help. Just as a guest. She hesitated. She had her own life. Her own struggles. But something about the child stayed with her. She agreed. When she arrived at the mansion, she looked small against the tall walls and shining floors. She was offered tea in expensive cups that made her nervous to touch. The girl watched her closely, unsure if this new place would change things. But the waitress remained the same. They sat on the floor together. They talked. They listened. They shared silence without discomfort. That day passed without a single outburst. The parents watched from a distance, afraid to interfere. For the first time in years, they felt something unfamiliar. Hope. After the first visit, nothing was rushed. The parents did not turn the moment into a plan or a schedule. They had learned the hard way that pressure only pushed their daughter further away. Instead, they let things happen slowly, one day at a time. The waitress began visiting once or twice a week. Always short visits. Always simple. Sometimes she brought nothing. Sometimes she brought a small notebook or colored pencils. There were no lessons. No rules. Just time. At first, the girl tested her the same way she tested everyone. She ignored her on some days. On others, she spoke too loudly or said sharp things, waiting for a reaction. But the waitress never flinched. She did not correct her tone. She did not walk away. She stayed calm, as if nothing about the behavior surprised her. That confused the girl. Slowly, the test stopped. One afternoon, they sat by a large window overlooking the garden. The girl watched birds land on the fence and fly away again. After a long silence, she spoke. "Why don't you get mad?" The question was quiet, almost careless, but it carried weight. The waitress did not answer right away. She thought carefully. "Because being mad won't make you feel better," she said. The girl nodded, as if that answer confirmed something she already knew. From that day on, the conversations grew deeper. The girl talked about school, about how teachers watched her closely, expecting trouble, about how other kids avoided her, about how loud feelings felt inside her chest, like they were too big to hold. No one had listened to her like this before. The parents noticed changes they never thought possible. Their daughter began asking before leaving rooms. She started finishing meals. She slept through the night more often. The house felt lighter even on difficult days. Still, doubt lingered. The father worried it was temporary, a phase that would pass like everything else. He had seen hope rise and fall too many times. One evening, he watched the waitress and his daughter sitting on the floor, building something simple out of paper. No phones. No raised voices. Just quiet focus. He realized something then. This was not about control. It never had been. The girl did not need to be managed. She needed to be seen. The waitress was not doing anything extraordinary. She was not trained. She was not using techniques or strategies. She was simply present. Later that night, the parents asked the waitress about her own life. Not out of curiosity but out of respect. She hesitated, then shared small pieces. She spoke about growing up in a home where emotions were ignored, where silence was safer than honesty, where no one asked how she felt. "When you're not allowed to speak," she said quietly, "you learn other ways to be heard." The room stayed silent after that. The parents understood more than words could explain. Days passed, then weeks. The girl began setting boundaries instead of breaking them. When she felt overwhelmed, she asked for space instead of exploding. When she felt lonely, she said so. There were setbacks, moments when anger returned. Doors slammed, tears flowed. But now those moments passed faster, because someone stayed. The waitress never replaced the parents. She never took their role. Instead, she helped them understand their daughter in a way no book ever had. The mother started sitting with her child during difficult moments instead of trying to end them. The father learned to listen without offering solutions. The girl noticed. One afternoon, she hugged her mother without being asked. Another day, she laughed freely, a sound that echoed through the halls and stopped everyone in their tracks. The waitress watched these moments quietly, knowing she was only part of the journey. One evening, as she prepared to leave, the girl followed her to the door. "Will you come back?" she asked. The waitress smiled. "Yes," she said, "as long as you want me to." That night, the girl wrote something in her notebook. It was short, messy, but clear. "I am not broken." The parents found it by accident days later. They cried silently, careful not to let her see. For the first time, they believed their daughter's future might not be shaped by fear. It might be shaped by understanding. The changes were no longer small enough to ignore. Friends of the family noticed them first. During quiet visits, they saw a child who stayed in the room instead of storming out. A child who listened, even if she did not always agree. The parents smiled politely but said little. They were afraid to explain something that still felt fragile. Inside the house, life slowly took a new shape. The girl began waking up without fear. Some mornings were still heavy, but others were light in a way no one had seen before. She started choosing her clothes on her own and eating breakfast without protest. These were ordinary things, yet in that house they felt like victories. The waitress continued her visits, never increasing them, never changing her rhythm. She understood that too much of anything could break trust. Sometimes she sat with the girl and did nothing at all. Other times they talked for hours about thoughts that had no clear ending. One afternoon, the girl asked a question that surprised everyone. "Why do people always try to fix me?" The room went quiet. The waitress answered gently, "Because they don't understand you yet." The girl thought about that. Then she nodded, as if the answer fit into a place that had been empty for a long time. At school, things slowly improved. The teachers reported fewer incidents. The girl began raising her hand instead of walking out. She still struggled, but she no longer felt like the problem in every room. Her confidence grew quietly without needing attention. The parents started changing too. They stopped apologizing for their daughter's emotions. They stopped hiding her struggles from the world. Instead, they spoke honestly with those who needed to know. The father, once known only for control and command, learned patience in ways business had never taught him. He stopped giving orders at home. He started asking questions. The mother found her voice again. She stopped blaming herself and started trusting her instincts. She held her daughter during difficult moments instead of stepping away. One evening, after a long day, the girl had a setback. She became overwhelmed, her voice rising, her hands shaking. Old patterns threatened to return. Everyone froze. The waitress did not rush in. She did not speak immediately. She waited. The girl looked at her, breathing hard. "It's too loud inside," she whispered. The waitress nodded. "Then let's make it quiet," she said. They sat together on the floor. No words, just breathing. The storm passed. The parents watched, tears in their eyes. This moment mattered more than any calm day, because this time the girl did not lose herself. That night, the father made a decision that surprised even him. He offered the waitress a position in the household, with a salary that could change her life. She listened carefully. Then she said no. Not out of pride. Not out of anger. She explained that her role was never meant to be permanent or powerful. She was there to help the girl find her own strength, not to become someone she depended on. The parents respected her more than ever. Instead, they agreed on something simple. She would continue visiting as long as it helped. Nothing more, nothing less. The girl overheard part of the conversation. Later, she asked quietly, "You're not leaving, right?" The waitress knelt beside her. "Not yet," she said. "And when I do, you'll be ready." The girl did not fully understand, but she trusted her. Weeks passed. The girl began helping others in small ways. She comforted a classmate who was crying. She shared her pencils without being asked. She noticed feelings outside her own. The parents realized something powerful was happening. Their daughter was not being controlled. She was growing. One afternoon, the girl stood in front of the mirror and smiled at her reflection. It was a small smile, but it stayed. She walked downstairs and said something that made the house go silent. "I like who I am today." No one spoke. No one moved. Because in that moment, every struggle, every tear, every failed attempt suddenly made sense. The impossible was no longer impossible. It was happening. Quietly, naturally, humanly. The house no longer felt like a place holding its breath. Felt lived in. Mornings began with quiet movement instead of tension. Some days were still hard, but they no longer felt hopeless. The girl woke up knowing she would be understood, even if she struggled to understand herself. The visits from the waitress became less frequent, not because they were no longer needed, but because the girl had learned how to stand on her own emotional ground. She still welcomed her warmly, still talked openly, but she no longer clung to her presence. That was the clearest sign of growth. One afternoon, the girl came home from school looking thoughtful instead of upset. She sat at the table and started drawing. Her mother watched quietly, afraid to interrupt. After a while, the girl spoke. "I told my teacher when I needed a break today," she said. The words were simple, but they carried years of struggle behind them. The mother smiled, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm proud of you," she said. The girl nodded, accepting the words without suspicion. At school, teachers noticed a steady change. The girl was no longer labeled as difficult. She was seen as expressive, sensitive, and strong-minded. When challenges appeared, she worked through them instead of fighting them. The parents were invited to a meeting, not because of a problem, but because of progress. The room felt lighter than any meeting before it. That evening, the father stood alone in his office, looking out over the city lights. He thought about everything money had failed to buy. Control, peace, connection. He realized success had never taught him how to be present. He walked into the living room and sat beside his daughter. "Thank you for teaching me," he said. She looked at him, confused. "How?" she asked. "By being honest," he replied. She thought about that, then smiled. The waitress visited one last time before taking a new job opportunity in another place. She told the family gently, without drama. The girl listened quietly, her face calm. "Will you be okay?" the waitress asked. The girl nodded. "Yes," she said. "I know what to do now." They hugged, not tightly, not desperately, but with trust. After she left, the girl went to her room and opened the notebook she had been writing in for months. She added a new line beneath the old ones. "I can feel big things and still be safe." Life moved forward. There were still arguments, still tears, still moments of doubt, but they no longer defined the family. The girl grew into someone who spoke her mind without fear, someone who felt deeply without shame, someone who understood that emotions were not enemies. The parents changed too. They listened more than they spoke. They stopped trying to manage feelings and started respecting them. Years later, the story was never told in headlines. No interviews, no public praise. The waitress returned to her quiet life, proud but unseen. The family remained wealthy, but richer in ways few would notice. Sometimes, when the girl felt overwhelmed, she remembered a calm voice, a patient presence, and the simple truth she had learned. She was never broken. She was human, and that made all the difference.